Welcome back, true crime fans. Today we delve into a chilling story of deception, manipulation, and murder that spans decades. Meet Harold, a man who seemed like a loving husband and father until his dark secrets were exposed. A life insurance policy, a suspicious car accident, and a tragic fall set the stage for a web of lies unraveling Harold's carefully constructed facade. But the story doesn't end there. As detectives uncovered more and more lies, they began to piece together the horrifying truth. Was the death of his first wife an accident? Or was it just one more step in a sinister plan to claim another life? On September 29, 2012, the serene beauty of Rocky Mountain National Park in Colorado was shattered by a scream that echoed across the cliffs, followed by a desperate plea for help. At 5:45 p.m., Harold Henthorne, a middle-aged man celebrating his 12th wedding anniversary, called the park's dispatch center to report a horrifying incident. His wife, Toni, had fallen from a cliff and was gravely injured. Speaking with urgency, Harold described how Toni had slipped while they were hiking, plunging onto the jagged rocks below. He begged for immediate assistance, his voice trembling as he explained that she was still breathing but unresponsive. As time ticked on, the park remained eerily quiet. By 6:30 p.m., with no sign of rescuers, Harold made another call to 911. His desperation grew as he revealed that his efforts to perform CPR seemed ineffective. He pleaded for a rescue helicopter and mentioned lighting a small fire to create a smoke signal, hoping it would guide help to their remote location. Despite his frantic calls, communication soon faltered. Harold lost signal before he could provide precise coordinates, leaving rescuers to search blindly in the growing darkness. By nightfall, temperatures had plummeted to a chilling 4 degrees Celsius, complicating the treacherous rescue mission. A park ranger, equipped with medical supplies, painstakingly navigated the rugged terrain under the dim glow of a headlamp. After more than half an hour of hiking steep slopes, he found Harold at the base of the cliff, performing chest compressions on Toni's motionless body. Exhausted and visibly shaken, Harold insisted he had been trying to revive her for hours. The ranger, however, quickly noticed something peculiar. Toni's lipstick was still perfectly intact, unblemished by any attempts at mouth-to-mouth resuscitation. Harold's face, too, was clean, further casting doubt on his claims. At 10 p.m., the ranger officially declared Toni dead. The tragedy soon made headlines, painting a poignant picture of Toni's life. A devoted mother and accomplished ophthalmologist, Toni was described as a kind, faithful woman who came from a wealthy oil family. She and Harold, outwardly a loving couple, shared a passion for outdoor adventures. Yet behind this idyllic facade, questions began to emerge. Was this truly an accident, or was there a darker truth hidden beneath the surface? From the moment the ranger arrived, inconsistencies in Harold's story raised alarms. The couple had embarked on a challenging hike late in the afternoon, navigating rugged terrain with minimal preparation. They carried only a small keychain flashlight, suggesting they hadn't planned to camp or even stay out after dark. Their timing seemed reckless, especially given their age. Both were in their 50s and the difficulty of the trail. Investigators noted that the supposed spontaneity of their hike clashed with Harold's meticulous personality, further deepening their suspicions. Adding to the intrigue was a map discovered in Harold's Jeep during a routine search. Marked on the map was a small pink X precisely at the location where Toni had fallen. When questioned, Harold stumbled over his explanation, claiming he did not know the mark before hastily dismissing the investigators' concerns. This revelation, combined with the peculiar state of Toni's body, raised red flags. An autopsy revealed over a dozen fractures consistent with a high fall, but her sternum was completely intact, an unusual finding for someone who had allegedly undergone prolonged chest compressions. Furthermore, Toni's wedding ring remained on her finger, but its diamond, valued at $30,000, was missing. This odd detail only added to the growing sense of unease. Despite Harold's claims of grief, his behavior following the tragedy puzzled those around him. During interviews, he spoke in a calm, almost detached tone, showing no visible tears or signs of emotional distress. When investigators pressed him about the life insurance policy he held on Toni, Harold confirmed it was worth $1.5 million and intended to fund their daughter's trust. The revelation cast a shadow of doubt, with authorities questioning whether financial motives played a role in the tragedy. As investigators pieced together the events leading up to Toni's death, their focus shifted to Harold's peculiar actions and omissions. The couple's seemingly romantic anniversary hike, meant to celebrate their union, now appeared clouded by mystery. Could Harold have orchestrated the fall as part of a sinister plan? The trail of inconsistencies, from the unexplained mark on the map to the intact lipstick and missing diamond, left authorities grappling with one haunting question: was this a tragic accident or cold-blooded murder? The evidence indicated that Toni either fell or was pushed from the cliff, sustaining multiple injuries that ultimately led to her death. While the exact manner of her death remained ambiguous, homicide could not be ruled out. This left many unanswered questions. What truly happened to Toni? What unfolded between her and Harold in the moments leading up to the tragedy? How could a couple, who appeared so loving to those around them, end up in such a devastating situation? Toni was a highly accomplished ophthalmologist, running her own successful clinic. Despite her professional achievements and financial independence, she often felt overwhelmed by her workload. Her first marriage had ended in failure, leaving her emotionally drained and longing for a second chance at love and, more importantly, the child she deeply desired. Hoping to find a partner, Toni turned to online dating websites, where she soon met Harold. Harold's profile painted him as the ideal match: a deacon, geologist, and successful businessman with a passion for music, movies, and outdoor activities like scuba diving, hiking, and camping. Their courtship progressed quickly, and within weeks, Harold met Toni's parents. Her father, a wealthy oil and gas entrepreneur, was impressed by Harold's polite and humble demeanor. During dinner, Harold spoke briefly about his work as a geologist but focused more on his involvement in church activities, earning the family's approval. Although Harold had lost his first wife, Toni's family respected his privacy and refrained from asking about the circumstances of her death. Trusting Toni's judgment, they agreed to the wedding, set for 9 months later. Yet cracks in Harold's facade began to show early on. According to local custom, the groom was responsible for covering the cost of the wedding dinner, but Harold handed the bill to Toni's brother, promising to reimburse him later. This raised concerns. If Harold was as successful as he claimed, why couldn't he pay? Despite his doubts, Toni's brother covered the cost to ensure her happiness, though Harold never repaid him. On September 30th, 2000, Toni and Harold married in an extravagant Southern ceremony in Mississippi. Harold's controlling nature became evident as he tried to dictate every detail of the event. Following the wedding, the couple moved to Denver, where Harold claimed to run a thriving business. In 2002, Toni left her hometown for good, relocating to a luxury neighborhood in Denver. 3 years later, she gave birth to their daughter, and the family appeared to lead a happy, serene life until 2012, when Toni's tragic fall from a cliff shattered their idyllic image. It was only after her death that Toni's parents began to question Harold's claims. They realized they had never met any of his colleagues or clients. Toni had mentioned in passing that she was the primary breadwinner, as Harold contributed little financially. At the time, they assumed his business was struggling and discreetly sent money to help. But now, they wondered if Harold's purported success had been a lie. Police investigations later revealed that Harold had no work history and had been living off a $600,000 settlement from his first wife's death. Additionally, Toni's family reported that Harold had been increasingly controlling, isolating her from loved ones. He often intercepted calls from her parents, claiming she was busy or insisting on putting the phone on speaker while he listened. Toni endured his behavior, fearing another failed marriage. Her mother later recounted a chilling incident from May 2011. While on vacation, Harold had called Toni outside, where she narrowly escaped being struck fatally by a falling piece of wood. Though she survived, the experience left her shaken. Her mother urged her to investigate Harold, but Toni refused, saying, "He's my husband. I must trust him unconditionally." When news of Toni's fatal fall reached her mother, her suspicions immediately turned to Harold. Toni had a history of knee injuries from her school days, requiring multiple surgeries, which limited her ability to hike or walk long distances. If Harold truly loved Toni, how could he have allowed her to attempt something so strenuous? At Toni's funeral, Harold's erratic behavior and shifting explanations of the accident only deepened the family's unease. Friends noted his agitation, seemingly driven more by the ongoing police investigation than by grief. As the investigation continued, Toni's friends and family began to piece together a troubling picture of her marriage, raising critical questions about Harold's role in her tragic death. One friend described Harold as unrelentingly controlling, unwilling to let Toni socialize without him. Whenever she attended social events or spent time with friends, Harold would follow her like an unwelcome shadow, ensuring she was never truly alone. Toni's only moments of respite came during Harold's occasional business trips, though he never disclosed where he went or the nature of his work. Even then, the relief was short-lived, as Harold maintained a constant grip on her life. As the investigation into Toni's death unfolded, a shocking detail emerged. The $1.5 million life insurance policy Harold had mentioned to authorities was only a fraction of the truth. In reality, Toni had multiple policies, all naming Harold as the sole trustee, with a combined value totaling nearly $4.7 million. This revelation painted a chilling picture of Harold's financial entanglement with his wife, raising suspicions about his motives. However, money wasn't the only stake. Toni was far more valuable alive. Her family's oil business was thriving, and her inheritance promised to be worth significantly more than the life insurance payouts. But while financial gain may not have been Harold's immediate motive, his controlling behavior suggested a deeper need to dominate Toni's life entirely. Friends noted that cracks in their marriage had been visible for some time. About a year before her death, at a small gathering, Toni appeared unusually drained, her usual warmth replaced by exhaustion. She confided in her close circle that Harold's obsession with managing their finances had consumed their marriage. Every conversation and every decision revolved around money, leaving no space for intimacy, companionship, or joy. Harold meticulously managed all of Toni's accounts, treating her financial autonomy as a threat. To him, she was less of a partner and more of a resource to be controlled. Toni's father became alarmed when he noticed irregularities in her finances. She held shares in the family business, generating annual dividends of around $24,000, and had received $320,000 from a lawsuit settlement 18 months before her death. Yet, none of this money was in Toni's possession. All of it had been deposited into Harold's account. Angered by what he saw as blatant exploitation, Toni's father confronted her. "Why don't you have your own account?" he demanded. "Why are your finances tied entirely to Harold's?" Shaken by the confrontation, Toni finally took a step toward independence. She opened her own bank account, hoping it would give her a measure of control over her own life. But instead of backing off, Harold's need for dominance only intensified. He tightened his grip, scrutinizing every penny Toni earned or spent, isolating her further and driving her to the brink of despair. Friends and family began to worry about her well-being, but Toni kept her struggles mostly private, unwilling or unable to ask for help. For Toni, the logical next step might have been divorce. Yet, Harold wasn't ready to relinquish what he saw as his cash machine to him. Toni's new bank account and increasing independence were ominous signs, evidence that she was preparing to leave him. Harold couldn't allow that. If she left, he would lose control, not just over Toni but over the financial stability he had built around her. From Harold's perspective, Toni's death presented a far more appealing option. With her gone, he would gain immediate access to the $4.7 million life insurance payouts. Her independence, her inheritance, and her growing autonomy would no longer threaten his carefully constructed dominance. This unsettling backdrop of control, financial manipulation, and growing desperation laid the foundation for what investigators increasingly believed was a calculated murder. Harold's actions pointed to someone who saw his wife not as a partner but as a commodity, and when she began to assert her own agency, Harold made the chilling decision to end her life. On the night of May 6, 1995, at 10:25 p.m., a passerby noticed a Jeep parked at an intersection on Highway 67. Beside it, a man was crouched on the ground, desperately trying to resuscitate a woman lying motionless. That man was Harold Henthorne, and the woman was his first wife, Lynn. At Harold's request, the passerby immediately called emergency services. When the police arrived, they confirmed Lynn was dead. According to Harold, the tragedy began when he stopped to change a flat tire. Using 3 jacks to lift the car, he removed the flat and placed it in the vehicle. As he worked, he suddenly heard Lynn scream. She had spotted a bolt rolling under the car and bent down to retrieve it. In a horrifying turn of events, the car slipped off the jacks, pinning her underneath and causing fatal mechanical asphyxiation. Harold claimed he tried everything to free her, including CPR, but it was too late. The investigation found no anomalies at the scene, and the autopsy confirmed the cause of death as the car slipping and crushing her. The police ruled it an accidental death, and Harold's grief appeared genuine. Even Lynn's parents believed him to be an innocent, heartbroken widower. The report on Lynn's death remained filed away for 17 years until Harold's second wife, Toni, fell to her death under suspicious circumstances. This prompted the police to reopen Lynn's case, and unsettling parallels began to emerge. Two wives with significant life insurance policies had died under strange circumstances in remote areas, with Harold as the sole witness. Harold and Lynn had married in September 1982 in Colorado. Lynn, a daycare teacher, and Harold, who was pursuing a master's degree while working as a part-time consultant, appeared to be the perfect couple. They lived a modest yet seemingly happy life, their only regret being their inability to have children. Lynn, who adored kids, was overjoyed when she discovered she was pregnant shortly before the accident. Her family shared in her happiness, unaware that her joy would soon turn to tragedy. At Lynn's funeral, Harold's grief seemed genuine. Relatives from across the country offered him their support, and Lynn's father even held his hand as they mourned together. However, years later, Lynn's sisters recalled that she was an exceptionally cautious person, someone unlikely to crawl under a car propped up on jacks to retrieve a bolt. Roughly 4 years after Lynn's death, Harold began dating again with the full support of Lynn's family. They wished him happiness when he eventually married Toni, unaware of the dark secrets Harold was hiding. In 2009, Harold demonstrated his generosity when Grace, Lynn's sister-in-law, faced financial difficulties after separating from her husband. He sent her hundreds of dollars and encouraged her to move to Colorado with her children. Harold even introduced Grace to an insurance agent, convincing her to share her personal information, including her social security number and savings details. Trusting Harold implicitly, she signed the documents he provided without question. Though Harold continued to offer financial help, sending Grace $600 monthly and enrolling her daughter in a Christian acting school, his behavior began to feel controlling. He sarcastically referred to her as ungrateful if she hesitated to follow his suggestions, leaving Grace increasingly uneasy despite his outward generosity. Harold had attempted to control every aspect of Grace's life, but she soon found work and took the necessary steps to cancel the insurance policies she had unknowingly signed. However, her efforts were in vain. One day, 2 police officers arrived at her door with unsettling news: the policies had never been canceled. Harold had forged her signature and continued to pay the premiums. The most shocking revelation was that the $400,000 policy wasn't intended for Grace's children, but for Harold himself. A cold realization set in his constant invitations for Grace to stay close to him now seemed like part of a sinister plan. She was his next target. In 2013, a breakthrough occurred when a new witness came forward in the investigation into Lynn's death. The witness had an uncanny memory and recalled Harold telling him after the accident that he didn't know how to change a tire, a direct contradiction to his earlier statements. Investigators then reenacted the scene of Lynn's tragic death. They discovered a key detail: the bolt that Lynn was allegedly trying to retrieve was misshapen and couldn't have rolled far under the Jeep. This indicated that someone must have deliberately placed it there. Further tests showed that the car, lifted by a jack, didn't fall when various objects were placed into the back seat unless someone had pushed it from the passenger side. Strangely, photographs from the scene revealed a clear footprint near that side of the vehicle. As the investigation deepened, police learned that Harold had no verifiable income and had been living off the settlement from Lynn's death. His claims about business ventures and fundraising were all lies. Tracking his movements, investigators found that, in the months leading up to Toni's fall, Harold had visited Rocky Mountain National Park 9 times, possibly scouting locations to murder his second wife. On November 6, 2014, Harold dropped his daughter off at school before driving home, unaware that the authorities were closing in. By October 6, 2014, Harold's plans were starting to unravel. Police arrested him that morning, and he was charged with the first-degree murder of Toni. Despite the mounting evidence, Harold refused to plead guilty. On November 12, 2014, he appeared in court, maintaining his innocence. At the same time, investigators worked diligently to compile their findings into an 11-page report on Lynn's death, pointing out the numerous flaws in the original investigation. They noted that Harold had never been formally questioned, and there were inconsistencies with the footprints, witness testimony, and even the autopsy. The report also raised critical questions about Lynn's death. Why weren't her hands dirty, as they should have been if she had been under the car retrieving a bolt? And why were Harold's hands spotless despite supposedly changing the tire? The more the police examined the case, the more evidence pointed to foul play, leading to Lynn's death being reclassified from accidental to undetermined. Her family, horrified by the findings, called for a deeper investigation into what truly happened to Lynn. As the case progressed, Harold's criminal history and disturbing patterns became undeniable. Finally, in May 2015, authorities held a hearing, presenting new evidence, including the life insurance policies, the strange circumstances of Toni's death, and the inconsistencies in Harold's statements. The defense tried to argue that there were no signs of a struggle and that Lynn's injuries had never been suspected to be intentional, but the prosecution laid out a damning case. By September 2015, Harold's trial for Toni's murder began. The prosecution presented photos from the crime scene, dissecting Harold's numerous lies and contradictions. Harold had claimed to have been standing behind Toni when she fell, but evidence showed that he wasn't near her when the fall occurred. His calm demeanor and slow response time after the incident raised further suspicions. The jury was shown how Harold, instead of immediately calling for help, had carefully gathered his belongings and descended the cliff, and only after moving Toni's body did he make the call. Further investigations revealed that, by the time Harold had tried to administer CPR, Toni had likely been dead for over an hour, and the bloodstains on the rocks told a horrifying tale of the severe head trauma she had suffered from the fall. Reports emerged that immediately after the funeral, Harold took control of Toni's phone, wiped her computer, and filed for insurance claims, showing his suspicious nature of greed and covertness. On September 15, 2015, around 3 p.m., the judge delivered the verdict. Harold was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. This sentence brought closure to both families that were involved in sinister plans. Thank you for listening to True Crime Pulse. Share your thoughts on the story, and until the next episode, stay vigilant.